Yo, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners. And every offseason, we get to a point where things just start to maybe go a little bit awry for several reasons, one way or another. The offseason gets here, and there are some mistakes that as a fantasy football player you make. Whether you're in dynasty leagues, redraft leagues, it doesn't matter. If you're in the offseason, you're doing something that's probably wrong, and let's make this the offseason that we clean it up. And that's why I have got my top 6 offseason mistakes that everybody makes in fantasy football. Now, maybe you don't make all 6 of these. Maybe you only make 1 or 2, but my guess is that at some point in time, you have also made these mistakes. You know what would be one mistake, though, is not pre-ordering our fantasy football draft guide for 2021. So there is a link down below. Go to thefantasyheadliners.com, and you can pre-order our 2021 fantasy football draft guide right now for $14.99. Man, it doesn't get any better than that. But hey, let's jump into the top 6 mistakes that you're probably making. When we talk about these, do me a favor down below, hit the like button. And also subscribe to the channel if you are new here. But mistake number 1 that you're probably making, letting the rookie hype take over. Now, this is especially true in dynasty leagues without a doubt, especially this time of the year. Because right now we're leading up to the NFL draft. We're talking about all these rookies, going in depth on them, and everybody's excited, right? You want to have the brand new shiny toy, okay? That's what happens when rookie hype takes over. And it's okay to be excited about rookies, but letting the rookie hype overtake you, that's a little bit concerning, because what happens, first off, in redraft leagues is you get to draft season and you know what you do? You start taking some of these rookies a little too early. It happened last season with a couple of different guys. One guy I can think of is Cam Akers. People were really, really excited for Cam Akers. They were probably overdrafting him a little bit. He finally ended up doing well, but it took almost the entire season for him to get there. That happens when we get into redraft season. For dynasty owners, you're out there, you're trading away valued assets just so you can get a shot at one of these rookies in a rookie draft. We put too much value on these rookies coming out because it's what's here, it's what's new, it's what's in our mind now. And it also leads me into my second mistake that fantasy football owners are probably making, falling for recency bias. That's right. These two kind of play in together because right now, we're watching tape on rookies. We're excited. We're doing these things. We fall for the recency bias. That happens. What's part of that recency bias? Well, let's talk about what happens with rookies. Part of that is happening in the draft right now. We saw Mac Jones win a championship at Alabama. Justin Fields did not. The last thing that we saw from Mac Jones was better than the last thing that we saw from Justin Fields. And it's making people drop Justin Fields down their draft board. So it happens in the NFL draft as well. And fantasy football, it happens all the time. We fall for that recency bias. A lot of times what will happen is we'll take a look at the recency. We'll take a look at what happened the most recent, the final 6 games of the season, final 7, 8 games of the season, from the halfway point to here, maybe in the playoffs. Something along those lines. And I got another video kind of coming out about that as well. But when you take a look at the recency bias can label a guy like Cam Akers as the next big running back. Now, I just mentioned him a second ago, right? But take a look at the overall season. If you look at just the last part of the season, the most recent part, you're looking at the playoffs, and he had a great playoffs, okay? Looked absolutely fantastic. 36 carries, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns in the playoffs. And some of the games leading up to that was playing well too, okay? But here's the issue. He was inactive 3 times. He had 2 games where he had 0 touches, and he had 5 games where he had single-digit touches. That's where recency bias takes over, because we saw Cam Akers at the end of the season. Oh, man. Whew. This guy looks good. He looks like he's the guy finally. And then we see Matthew Stafford traded for by the Rams. Oh, man, he's got Matthew Stafford. That's awesome. That's going to help open things up. We take a look at that, and those are the last two things we see. So, yeah, we're excited about Cam Akers. We think he's – but if you look at the full season numbers, maybe you're being a little bit too high. There are people that I see putting Cam Akers in not only their top 12, not only their top 10, but their top 7 running backs right now. That is what recency bias will do to you. You got to leave that at the door. Make sure when you're doing your research, you're taking a look at a full season. And if you want to break it into segments, that's fine. Okay? I'm not trying to take anything away from what Cam Akers did at the end of the season. He did that because he was earning the coaching staff's trust and he was starting to play a little bit better. But don't forget that one of the guys that they felt like was better than him to start, Darrell Henderson. Remember him? Keep an eye on that. Darrell Henderson maybe. Malcolm Brown is gone, but Darrell Henderson might be getting a few more touches than what Cam Akers owners will be excited about. During the offseason, Jake and I kind of laugh about this every single offseason since I've been here. But it is crazy to us how many people tune out. Even if you're just the most casual of fantasy football players, stay tuned in during the offseason. Check out our videos. Look at the research. Check in on some of the names that are being drafted. We tell people this every single year. We're like, hey, we don't go anywhere. There's no offseason. But every single year, it absolutely happens. Towards the end of the season, we see it happen from the last week of the season until about maybe June-ish. We see our subscriber numbers drop a little bit. Why is that? It's because people who only use YouTube during the season to watch fantasy football videos, they tune out during the off season. Their accounts deactivate because it's been so long since they've been on them, and then they don't come back. And then all of a sudden, we see some of those numbers come back, and people comment. They're like, "Oh, hey, I've been gone," and blah blah blah. I mean, and then some of those numbers return plus more. But it's just funny because we can tell that there's, not a whole lot, but quite a few fantasy football owners that they just tune out during the offseason. They're done with it. They played a game. We're gone. Don't do that. During the offseason, this is the best time to get ahead of other owners, because if you're doing the research and you're watching right now, you're finding out about some of these guys way in advance, and you're finding out about them way in advance, and that gives you time to formulate your own opinion on them. And if something seems to be a little out of the ordinary, or you don't like something, or then you have time to figure those things out and look into it a little bit further. Do not tune out during the off season. It is a mistake that a lot of people make, and it's one that can put you behind the ball with everybody else out there that's watching right now. I want to kind of backtrack for just a second. We talked about recency bias, and I mentioned Cam Akers, and this is, this is the last games of the season. Part of that could be relying on small sample sizes. Twitter is the absolute worst when it comes to this. If you have a Twitter account and you follow fantasy football people over on Twitter, there has become a little segment of Twitter that really the only football analysis that they do is through Twitter. But how many characters do you get in a tweet, man? You don't get that many, okay? So you might only be seeing bits and pieces of it. And yeah, you can put together these big, long threads that are 6, 7, 8 tweets long. But honestly, how many of you are reading through all of those while you're on Twitter? But not only that, how many of you are actually finding those? If other people start to comment, they start getting broken up, or maybe they aren't done in order, so now they're all out of sync, and you just see them on your timeline. The problem with that is small sample sizes are used by Twitter analysts, okay? That's what I refer to some people as, all right? I'm not taking anything away from them because I know a lot of them and they do a lot of hard work, okay? So I'm not disparaging them. I'm not saying that they're not good at what they do. But part of the issue with Twitter analysts is that they tweet in these small sample sizes. Number one, they are legitimate small sample sizes. You don't have that much room to work with, so you throw together a tweet because your main goal is to get as many likes as possible. You can't expand on that in Twitter. And you know what? You know why I feel like I can talk about this is because I used to be one of those people. Before I started making videos here with the Fantasy Headliners, before I teamed up with Jake, okay, a lot of my analysis, a lot of the things that I did was on Twitter. It's part of the reason that I built the following I did is because I was constantly tweeting out all these things and being very active, blah, 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 all of that. But for me, since I've come into this realm where I can make videos, I've stopped doing that. I don't tweet those little small sample sizes anymore because sometimes I would get some numbers in my head and I'd be like, oh, this is what it means. And then people would read it and they'd be like, WTH, bro, what in the world is wrong with you? Do you get your head slammed in a door when you were a child? Come on. It's so small that somebody might scroll by, they might see it, and they'll be like, oh, hey, but there's no context behind it. You can't put context behind anything on Twitter, okay? I see it a lot. Some people do it in video. Some people do it in articles. You know, some people might be like, oh, hey, from week 12 to week 14, this person was the wide receiver 1, and it was because of this. And, well, you're only looking at 12, 13, 14. You're looking at 3 weeks. 3 weeks for me is far too small of a sample size to make any kind of a decision. But sometimes we see those things. Sometimes we say, hey, we put that in the back of our mind, but it's such a small sample size. I don't do that anymore. All those things that I used to post on Twitter, I do videos about now because I can do a 10, 15-minute video on it that I know a lot of you are going to watch. I can expand on it. I can talk about it more, and I can go more in depth. And that's what you need to be paying attention to is that content that's just not relying on that small sample size. It's going in depth for you. In the offseason, far too many times I see people make final decisions. And I don't mean like roster decisions. I mean, they make final decisions about a player, okay? I mean, this is a time of year where somebody, again, maybe they see something on Twitter. Maybe they read an article, watch a video, listen to a podcast, whatever it may be. They see these things happen and they're like, oh my gosh, yep, that's it right there. Boom, done. No. You can't do that. Far too many fantasy owners make final decisions on players far too in advance. I mean, we haven't even had the draft yet, and I've already seen people on Twitter, and I've seen some different posts and things of that nature where people are like, is so-and-so a top 12 running back this season? Yes, he is. Here's how. And when we do our rankings, how many times, if you watch our rankings, do you hear me say, these will change? 100% they will change. That's why when you see Jake and I do our must-have videos, do not draft league winners, those videos, our biggest videos of the year, we try to get those much closer to the season. I'm not doing them right now. Why? Because just because I really like somebody right now doesn't mean that that opinion isn't going to change. Something could happen in the draft. Someone could get hurt. Maybe a free agent that's left on the market still shows up there. Maybe there could be lots of reasons. Maybe we find some more information. Maybe we dig a little bit deeper on somebody and we're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this. I have to take that into account. That's why this is not the time of year to be making your final decision. So if you think that you've made a decision on a player, aka Joe Mixon haters, I know a lot of you. From last year, I pushed him hard. I ended up having him way too high. He was still a running back 1 when he got hurt. We knew the volume would be there. But there's a lot of you at this point who have said, I'm not drafting Joe Mixon again. Gio Bernard was just released. If you don't think that doesn't help Joe Mixon, then you're not paying attention. There's a lot of you that are saying, well, I'm not going to draft Saquon Barkley because of a knee injury. Why? Because he tore his ACL? Remember when everybody was fading Adrian Peterson back when he tore his ACL? He almost broke the single-season rushing record on that leg. He came back and ended up playing just fine. We've seen guys come back quick. Cooper Kupp is a guy that came back quick. All right? You can't make those decisions right now. You need to wait. You need to see how the offseason progresses, and then we will go from there and make those final decisions the closer we get. Point number 6 and the final one, it is selling high. A lot of times I will see fantasy football owners sell high in a player in the offseason because, oh, hey, their value can't get any higher. This point in the offseason is really for a lot of people that play like in dynasty or keeper-like leagues. And you're selling high on a player, a.k.a. a Derrick Henry. Well, he can't do that again. No running back is ever. DK. I can't even get people right now. Derrick Henry is a completely different monster than what we've seen at the running back position. And he sure is a different person than we've seen in quite some time. He is a guy with his build, his size, the way he runs. He doesn't take any hard hits. He is a guy that could put up these numbers again because he's a guy that can stand up to it. Freak injuries happen. Yeah, he could go out there and he could tear something next year, but that could happen with anybody, okay? But you look at a guy like Derrick Henry and someone's like, Derrick Henry, he's done. Let's go ahead and move on for him. I'm going to sell him for the 1.02 rookie pick and David Montgomery. No, don't do things like that. Don't you even dare think about it. I saw it last year with Dalvin Cook, last offseason. After he had his big season, we were all on board with Dalvin Cook 2 years ago. We absolutely loved what was coming into the season. Has a huge season. People are like, he can't do that again. He's going to get hurt. We can't trust him. And they sold him, and then he ended up doing it again. Okay? It happens all the time, especially at the running back position. It happens at the running back position a lot. Okay? So when you're looking at selling high, it's not always a bad thing to sell high, but it is a bad thing when you're formulating an opinion in your head that you're selling high because a player can never do it again. Okay? Sometimes that is true. For instance, maybe selling high on a guy like Jalen Hurts in a Superflex league is 100% the right thing to do right now. His value right now is through the roof because people are excited about him and what he could do there in his legs and how that adds to his fantasy value. But do you think that he can go out and do anything this year to increase that value, or can it only go down? If you think it can only go down, then moving on from a guy like Jalen Hurts right now absolutely would make 100% sense, okay? But selling high isn't always the best thing. And I feel like far too many times fantasy owners are like, time to sell high. Let's do it. Let's get whatever we can back for it. And it's a joke that I see a lot on Twitter. It's like, if nobody knew what Dynasty football was and they just walked onto Twitter, they would think that Dynasty football was about selling your veterans every single season just for rookie picks and never winning. Because that's what it seems like sometimes. But there you have it. My top 6 mistakes that fantasy football owners make during the off season. If you like the video and the content, like the video down below. If you appreciate it, if you like what we're doing here, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Strongly encourage you all to stick around. Like I said in my video, don't go anywhere. Content coming all off season long. And ladies and gentlemen, leave me a comment down below and let me know what one mistake is that you make during the offseason, or one mistake that you've made that you've learned from. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you tuning into this video. Thanks so much, Headliner Nation. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.